onslaught. I know that was really difficult to listen to. It was kind of a microcosm of what's wrong with the politics in this country, sort of the very adolescent bullying mentality of self-promoting politicians. That was really kind of a nonstop session of misinformation, omitted key issues, the elephant in the room, of what Americans are really struggling with was sort of entirely absent, whether you're talking about the healthcare crisis, crushing inequality, the struggle of workers, the struggle of people who are renting their housing, who are 1 to 2 paychecks away from being evicted, homelessness rates that are off the charts, 60%, over 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. Each candidate wanted to claim that they, were miracle workers for the economy, and, it's just kind of adolescent mudslinging. So that was a real achievement to survive. So I'll make a few observations about where we are and what we actually need. One thing that we need is open debates so that we can actually have these issues truly debated and discussed, not just from the point of view of Wall Street and the war machine, which are funding both of these parties, not just from the point of view of these zombie candidates that the American people really have had quite enough of. We know that a poll came out recently this week showing that the so-called double haters, that is the American people who really will not vote for either candidate, is at twice the level right now as it was in 2016, which was the prior record. It's something like 25% of Americans that are saying right now, and this number continues to go up, and after tonight we can see why it will continue to keep going up. 25% of Americans will not vote for either of these candidates. We also saw in a poll today from the New York Times that we are now at, I believe it's 6% or 4%. Let me see, what is it? Actually 6% among Americans age 30 and under. So as word gets out, people are really hungry for other alternatives. And thank you all so much for being a part of that and for, making the demand without which politics does not move. And our demand specifically, is that we deserve an America that's working for all of us. It is not currently, and tonight, we heard some of how the current political system sort of distracts and diverts from what the real issues are. I'm going to just run through a few of the more outrageous things that were said. So just, for example, let them finish the job, as Trump was saying for Israel and Gaza, let them finish the job. Biden claiming to have passed a historic climate bill. We'll come back to these, but I just want to name them. Trump saying that they're killing babies, that when they're born, babies are being murdered, I guess as part of abortion, his opposition to abortion. Oh, and that, over and over again, we heard that it's rapists, murderers, and terrorists who are crossing the border. So first, a word about the immigration crisis. The most critical thing that we can do on the immigration crisis is to stop causing it through endless wars, through regime change operations, through the drug wars, which basically empower the drug cartels to it empowers them, it brings a lot of money their way, and it enables them to conduct their campaigns of violence and their turf wars, which are driving large numbers of people, fleeing for their lives. And also the climate crisis, of course, which is getting worse before our very eyes. We heard 2 weeks ago that in Mexico, in the Yucatan, that monkeys and parrots, howler monkeys and parrots are falling from the trees from the heat. Similarly in Mecca on the pilgrimage, over 1,400 people died from the heat. And here in the US, we're looking at the shutdown of the Colorado River, which is now thought to be fairly inevitable and likely to happen within the next 1 to 2 years. the Washington Post ran a headline calling the Colorado River the doomsday scenario, which is that there will no longer be enough water to get out of Lake Mead into the Colorado River system, which irrigates California agriculture and provides half of the fruits and vegetables for the nation. So if we've seen, if you think it's bad, just wait a day or a year, it will be clearly off the charts, and there's Joe Biden claiming to be the climate president and have passed the most amazing climate bill on record. And, his climate bill is actually a fossil fuels first bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, which mandates, in fact, talk about mandates, it mandates that there be 60 million acres of offshore water that be auctioned off for fossil fuel extraction, and 2 million acres of onshore public lands be auctioned for fossil fuel extraction every year for the next 10 years before any major renewables projects can be built. So, we have an absolute crisis there. And that in turn is, to close the loop here, that climate crisis, which is not being fixed by either candidate. They are both climate criminals. They are not, climate heroes. They are climate criminals. Donald Trump is singing his praises, which he does all the time, that he had the cleanest water and the cleanest air. Well, unfortunately, that is not true. And he didn't say anything about, fossil fuel emissions. But actually, Joe Biden beats Donald Trump on fossil fuel emissions. And it's under both Obama and under Joe Biden that those emissions actually, reached their highest levels yet. And so, all of that helps drive the crisis of climate, including droughts as well as floods and mudslides that we hear about all the time that are also happening in this country. And that too is driving the migrant crisis. So again, back to this migrant crisis, which kept coming up throughout the debate. The issue here, if we want to solve the migrant crisis, let's stop creating that migrant crisis. And some of these require longer term solutions, and allowing these economies and these societies to recover, because we really destroy them for the long haul. Look at, for example, Guatemala, which we overthrew their democratically elected government in the 1950s, and it's taken them several generations to recover. Fingers crossed, they finally seem to have a stable democracy as of their last election. Let's hope it lasts. But Donald Trump just keeps saying that these are horrible, horrible people. We have to close down the border. Well, the truth of the matter is there's stuff that we can do right now, especially on the drug wars, because by declaring an end to the drug wars right now, namely by stopping to fund them and impose them south of the border, and also by moving to a new way to deal with drugs in this country and drug use, which would be as a public health issue, not as a criminal issue, by essentially decriminalizing drugs, starting with, cannabis, of course, and moving forward from there. But we can, on day one, the president, if we have that honor, we will instruct the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, to basically remove marijuana and cannabis from the list of regulated substances so that we can proceed with full legalization on cannabis. And then that is the workhorse, that is the workhorse for the violent cartels and the illegal drug industry. So that right there very quickly could begin to decompress this horror story driving so many people from their homes. And then I also just want to briefly say, instead of spending billions of dollars on the wall, which doesn't work, doesn't keep people from coming here and from fleeing for their lives, and it basically, drives many more people to their deaths. Instead of funding the wall, a completely ineffective use of our dollars. We could use those dollars instead to provide the infrastructure, the social infrastructure, and the social supports, and the migration attorneys, and the screening process, so that people can come, that is, people who need, we want to, offload the pressure that's pushing people to come. So that, number one. Then number two is, let's properly process the people who are still fleeing for their lives because, there is no more farming, because they don't have the water resources and so on, or because we've created, violent monstrosities in their countries. We need to accept these people who are fleeing because of damage that has been caused largely by the United States, and we need to properly process them, weed out violent criminals by having the personnel that can do background checks and so on, and get the migrants papered right away so people aren't waiting for years to be able to integrate into their new communities and to work. Because the truth of the matter is that migrants have always been a powerful resource for our economy. And that's true on the whole, and that's true individual communities as well. That when migrants can work, they more than pay their way. And when they don't have to be, under the cover of darkness, when they're working legally, they're paying taxes, they're not being manipulated because they're in the shadows. When they are participating in the economy, they are a huge driver. And I'm just seeing someone posting here, shame on CNN, and yes, I agree. Shame on CNN that we weren't allowed to be in this debate. And by locking us out, CNN was basically locking out the voices of the American people, because we are the only national scope campaign that's actually on the ballot already for the majority of voters. So we actually qualified according to one of the major criteria. We qualify for being on the ballot for a majority of voters. And we should have been admitted on that account. But also because we are the one campaign that does not take corporate money. We don't take money from corporate PACs. We do not work with super PACs, which are extremely corrupting. We work with we play by the rules. We don't have, these special loopholes like the victory funds that Democrats and Republicans use. So a single donor can write a check for $600,000 and more, and then pull strings from the inside. So yes, shame on CNN for locking us out. And I would say also shame on CNN because they let both candidates make outrageous assertions. It's like there was no adult in the room there. No one was playing the role of a moderator or doing fact checking or holding anyone accountable for what they said. And, that's a real shame and a real failing for the American people. This so-called debate, this sham debate, this debacle of a debate, I think was a real disservice to Americans. Let me say a couple things about COVID and healthcare, because that was another issue. Should we have, the mandates, and Donald Trump was saying this was such a disaster under Biden. Well, the truth is this was a disaster all around, and this is especially shameful because the United States is the wealthiest country in the world, yet we had one of the highest rates of COVID mortality. And we also know that 1 out of every 3 COVID deaths was linked to lack of access to health care and the lack of health insurance. So, for one thing, there's all sorts of support and treatment that people were denied, which was a major driver of our sky-high death rates from COVID. Another major issue is that people do not trust our regulatory institutions. That's why we have incredible, I think, debates and just really conflicting, bitterly conflicting opinions about how things should be treated. Should we wear masks? Shouldn't we have masks? Does social distancing help? Does it not? And I can tell you as a medical doctor, it is impossible to follow this unless this is what you've been trained to do and you spend full time following the literature, because things change as the studies come forward. So it's really important for us to get the big money special interests out of our regulatory institutions, because currently no one trusts what they say, or I shouldn't say no one, but a lot of people do not trust the recommendations of our CDC, our EPA, the FDA, you name it, because we have seen over and over again where special interests are ruling the day, like opioids, for example. The Sacklers, basically, the Sackler family, through their power and influence, were able to get the permissions that they wanted for these very dangerous drugs that are now killing 100,000 people every year from opioids and fentanyl. So, that's one example. Another one is the FAA and the enormous influence that Boeing has had over the really lack of regulation and support, so that, we've seen the horrific developments, particularly with Boeing, and these problems really remain unaddressed. So it's absolutely critical that we get the big money out and we close the revolving door, so that, for example, we see the Secretary of Defense, who was previously on the board of, I think it was Lockheed Martin, so you have the foxes really guarding the chicken coop with Monsanto as well. One of the Monsanto executives then rotated into the Food and Drug Administration and approved GMOs. So you have basically these, powerful corporations that are overseeing their own, profits, and regulation that very much impacts them. So if we're going to fix this, we have to fix this overarching problem. Having been in medicine for many decades, you see policies change all the time based on studies. And so it's not like you have a policy for once and for all and it's over and done with. We need institutions that we can trust, which are following this stuff. And my own feeling, by the way, about mandates, because this comes up all the time, as a medical doctor, I have become very uncomfortable with mandating people to put chemicals into their bodies. I find that just very Orwellian. I think our job is to be clear about the data and to make it clear to the American public, so that we are acting through persuasion, not through coercion. Coercing people to have to take chemicals and treatments, in my view, is Orwellian, and it is something to be avoided. In the old days, we used to do this by having some trust in medical institutions, and we've seen much of that go out the window with vast concentrations of wealth in our various medical institutions and the medical industrial complex and all that. Let me say a couple words. It was so annoying to hear Trump touting his record as like the peace guy, in Ukraine, that he was going to make peace with Ukraine. I wouldn't count on it, and I want to point specifically to the Middle East, and especially to Israel, where, again, he was saying it's time to finish the job, to finish them off, meaning Hamas, but, Israel says Hamas is everybody. So finish off, the 2 million Palestinians whose lives are really just hanging by a thread right now. It's important, not only is our country funding a genocide, and the rest of the world agrees that this is a genocide. The World International Court, or the International Court of Justice, the Criminal Court, the International Criminal Court, has issued arrest warrants for the Israeli leadership. In my view, Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken are also the arbiters of this war as well. They are full partners with Israel. This war and this genocide would not go on without them. In my view, they should be equally culpable. They should be held culpable because Israel operates with their permission. So we have 1 million people that the UN has said are at risk for dying within the next couple of weeks. And starvation is absolutely rampant now throughout Gaza. It's horrifying. I mean, it's really just staggering to look at what's happening. Did that come out? Did that come up at all? No, absolutely not. There was not a word spoken about the genocide that the US is committing right now. This is blood on our hands. And, the majority of the American people wants an immediate ceasefire and a diplomatic solution. We did not hear that come up. And we had two candidates basically who are warmongers, who are creatures of AIPAC, who are creatures of the military industrial complex, which all of Congress is virtually, with very few exceptions. So, let me just stress that this is a huge factor in why, what the current economic crisis is. Every American household now, on average, is paying $12,000 this year for the endless war machine right now. That's data from Columbia University Economics Sustainability Department, particularly Dr. Jeffrey Sachs in particular. $12,000 per year has been $55,000 since the 2001 war began, and the knockoff wars from that as well. So this war is impoverishing us. It's also endangering us. And we're seeing now, it's widely recognized that Israel is on the verge of a full-scale assault against Lebanon and Hezbollah. And this will be absolutely catastrophic. The commentators on this that I have seen are pretty much in agreement that this is an outright disaster and almost sure to bring Iran in. So Israel, this is like curtains for Israel. This isn't just curtains for Palestine. This is curtains for Israel because its neighbors in particular are being mobilized against it. And the firepower that's being engaged now potentially against Israel should give everyone pause, especially those who think that they are allies of Israel and want to defend Israel. Then we really need to have rational policy right now instead of this just blatant warmongering, the apartheid state, and the longstanding policies of ethnic cleansing and occupation. And the ethnic cleansing, for those who aren't aware, but I imagine most people on this call are aware that the ethnic cleansing was really written into the plan with the founding of the State of Israel and had begun even before Israel was, declared its independence in 1948, that there has been a plan essentially to terrorize the people of Palestine and drive them out. And that's essentially what's been going on. So that's how we fix this. We don't fix this by, attempting to so-called kill off Hamas. We fix the underlying problem, which has to happen. So, there is a way out. There is a way out through international law, human rights, and diplomacy, which should be the basis of U.S. foreign policy, not what we currently have. So the amount of money that we are putting into this is staggering, and that is into the whole war machine, which, let me be clear, we are at risk for World War III here in Israel, and this potential to engage Lebanon now, and which in turn will engage Iran, which in turn will engage Russia, because Iran and Russia are now allied. Israel has also talked about nuking not only Gaza, they've talked about nuking Lebanon as well to get it over quickly, so-called. So two warmongers basically competing for who can get us to World War III the soonest. That's what our choice is currently. And let me just put in a pitch here right now for people to please go to jillstein2024.com and join the team here, help with the petition drives, help with our fundraising, because the Democrats are pulling out all the stops. They're getting really scared, which is a great sign. It's a real tribute to everybody that we are getting somewhere in a big way. But the Democrats are intent on draining our resources here by challenging our ballot access all over the place. They have also advertised, in case you haven't heard about this is pretty incredible, and we'll be sharing the documents, but they have done job postings. The DNC has done job postings basically to supervise infiltrators and spies, essentially. So they are. And I think they've been doing that for a long time. It's just now that they're actually advertising publicly, which is pretty incredible. So we badly need your help to fight back. I'm just seeing, the comment here that, Eisenhower warned us way back in the 50s that this is the military-industrial complex, which has taken on a life of its own. We're seeing that with AIPAC. We saw AIPAC and Gerald Bowman, the congressman from New York district, I forget which one, but basically turned out by a record amount of AIPAC spending. So they are there, and we have to stand up and stand for an America and a world that works for all of us. We are extremely interconnected between America and the world. If we're destroying the rest of the world, if we're setting it on fire, if we're being the biggest driver of the climate crisis and then neglecting it and failing to actually fix it, we are driving this chaos around the world, and that all impacts us back here at home. And the war, the enlarging war, the World War III in the making here, between Israel and its genocidal war against Gaza, and then also in Ukraine. Ukraine has sort of faded from the headlines because what's going on, the drama, the blood and gore that we see every day on our screens here in Israel is absolutely flabbergasting. But Ukraine is, a disaster and a tragedy in and of itself. It's something like 1,000 people a day, 1,000 Ukrainians a day are being killed. Then this is in the army, are being killed or seriously wounded, up to 1,000 a day. Generations are being destroyed. The country's being absolutely hollowed out. And the tragedy is that this was completely avoidable. It's been ginned up really since the early 1990s when actually Clinton first began to talk about expanding NATO to the east in violation of the promise that was made to the Soviet Union and to Gorbachev that wouldn't happen in exchange for allowing Germany to reunite and become a member of NATO. So we have been violating those agreements for a long time. More recently, we've been dismantling our nuclear weapons treaties as well. Of course, that's an issue that did not come up tonight either. Nuclear weapons is, certainly an existential issue for us all, and it is proceeding on at least two fronts, actually three if you include China as well, in the conflict that we're also escalating with China, but in particular in Ukraine. It is terrifying what's happening right now. We are really galloping up the escalation ladder now with the use of ever more violent weapons, and the US and NATO have all given permission to Ukraine to use their long-distance weapons to attack Russian territory. And so over last weekend, we saw Russian territory actually bombed with US weapons under guidance of US intelligence, because Russia jams its I don't know, the Wi-Fi or something for signal transmission. We bring in signal transmitting drones and relate the information that Ukraine needs to do its targeting. It targeted civilians on the beach. Why they did that, I don't know. I mean, it's just staggering. 5 people playing on a beach were killed in Ukraine. I'm sorry, in Crimea. And Russia has vowed to act in kind, with the US and NATO countries providing really deadly weapons on the borders of Russia. Russia has now said, okay, we'll respond in kind and start providing our deadly weapons to your neighbors. And now they've sent some boats over to, I think it's submarines, but I also heard it was, I don't know, maybe battleships as well. I'm not sure exactly what, but I did see submarines specifically that are now in Cuba and allegedly transmitting arms to Cuba. So like this is the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again, but in many areas now. It's not just in one place, Cuba. This is happening all over. And we desperately need some adults in the room. And as we saw tonight, we've got a couple of really, bullies in the schoolyard and a rather feeble elder who doesn't seem too sure of what he's saying or what he thinks, it's really hard to even understand what he's saying. It's pathetic, that this is our choice between a bully demagogue and a seriously declining, cognitively impaired, frail elder. Those are the choices we've been given, and it's so important for us to stand up and say, no, we are going to be on the ballot. And this is why the Democrats are, going to great lengths right now to try to take us off of the ballot. I should also mention, I got to mention healthcare. Not only that healthcare is a huge part of the solution to COVID, healthcare, and then cleaning up our agencies so they can actually provide information on behalf of the American people, not on the part of their corporate sponsors. But we need healthcare for its own sake, and it is absolutely outrageous. This is contributing, to this disastrous choice of living, cost of living here in this country, where 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and barely making ends meet. A lot of the costs here are healthcare costs. We are paying twice as much on a per person basis as the next biggest spender, which is Canada, and yet we have way worse health statistics to show for it. So we're paying more, and we're sick and getting sicker with chronic disease. And many of the drivers of this are in our communities, in our lousy food system, in the pollution that we're just imbued with from the get-go, from the lack of a recreational environment. You shouldn't have to join a health club and drive across town and pay exorbitant rates. We should have green space around us and modes of transportation that allow us to use muscle power in addition to non-polluting public transportation that's high quality and efficient. We can do this. So instead of driving us to sickness and premature death, we can be creating a healthier environment. But in addition, we need a healthcare system that's actually serving us. Right now, 1 out of every 3 healthcare dollars is spent on red tape, paper pushing, and big CEO salaries and advertising. It's a complete waste. So moving to a Medicare for all system, the overhead reduces from 33% to 3%. And by restoring the holes that have been knocked into Medicare, we create a system that people are very happy with, and it covers everything, your mental health, your dental health, your eyeglasses, your hearing aid, your chronic care, your home care, and you have complete choice of healthcare facility, hospital, and doctor, unlike, what it is now, where you're basically defined out of, the things that you urgently need in your longstanding healthcare provider relationships. So by creating a more efficient system, we save a huge amount of money. Oh, $500 billion a year actually is what we save at the same time that we get our healthcare back. I guess we've never really had it, but we have it less and less. We get good healthcare. We heard Joe Biden trying to defend Obamacare, which does a couple good things, but we still have a health disaster, which is proceeding rapidly, an extremely unjust healthcare system in which people of color, by the way, have far worse access, far worse health statistics, higher cancer rates, higher rates of heart disease, death rates among children from asthma are about 4 to 5 times what they are among the white population. So, this is an extremely unjust and tragic system where we could be fixing it. We could absolutely fix this and make it work for everyone at the same time that we then have lots of money left over to do the things we need. And I'll say the same for the war machine, the endless war machine, which is usurping half of our congressional budget right now. So over $1 trillion a year, that should be cut at least in half, putting, again, a lot of money into what we need here at home by way of healthcare, housing, education, quality schools, with all schools brought up to a common level, not having your school depend on how much luxury housing you have in your community, but ensuring that there's a federal standard and federal support, likewise supporting our teachers so that they're not burning out at the incredible rates that they are right now. We can do this, and there is the money if we're using it for us, not to destroy the world and basically feed the outrageous skyrocketing profits of the weapons industry and the war profiteers. I should say just a quick word about housing too, which is that this is a crisis that we can solve. So Joe Biden made some mention in passing about, how we're going to control the cost. And he didn't say anything about how we would do it, other than building more housing, which is what we need. But instead of subsidizing expensive, basically luxury housing, we need to subsidize affordable housing, truly affordable housing, public housing, so-called social housing, where the developers are not making a killing. In fact, it's not housing under the private development scheme. Rather, this is like public housing brought up to date, which means that it's quality, it's sustainably built, it's energy efficient, it has green space integrated into it, it is built along with transportation, public transportation, so that it doesn't bring traffic problems, and it's designed for mixed income groups so that you're not booted out of the housing when you get a job and you have a decent income. This is mixed housing, which creates a much more sustainable and prosperous, healthy, and happy community for the long haul. And we also have to ban the buyout of housing units right now by the private equity, which is gobbling up single-family homes, turning them into rental housing, or just sitting on them in order to, drive the prices up. So we have to stop that destruction of our housing supply. We need to build housing, and that is part of our agenda as well, part of the Green New Deal, in fact, part of meeting our social needs as part of meeting our environmental needs as well. We're talking about building millions upon millions of units of housing. And another fix that we can get to right away is federal rent control, because rent control helps. It is an emergency provision that helps prevent these skyrocketing rates of homelessness. We have to stabilize housing costs and, move towards housing that meets human needs instead of housing as a commodity for maximum profit. Okay, so I think that's covered some of our bases here. The other thing I wanted to mention was, how the Democrats are really pulling out all the stops right now to try to fight us. And this is a good sign. It's really a great sign that the Democrats are getting really worried about facing us. So they are now, we're in a different position here. We've never been in this position before. They have ignored us, they've laughed at us, but they haven't actually taken us to court to try to throw us off the ballot. And that is what they are now doing. They are taking us to court. They have never advertised for infiltrators and spies, which is what they're now also resorting to. And another new development is that they are now, well, let me be restrained in what I say at this moment, but we just heard today some really good news and then some very disturbing news. The good news is that we were told by the FEC that we've now qualified for matching funds. Or let me go beyond that. We've known that we qualified for well over a month. It's been like 2 months since we qualified. But today they told us they approved our application, which is for about $270,000, something like that. It's a huge infusion of money, which we badly need. A lot of this pays for contracting that we've already done to get us on the ballot, and our staff as well. So they approved this, but 10 minutes later, they sent another email that said, number one, give us your bank information so we can transfer the money. And then number two, very bizarrely, it said, oh, but we think the Department of Treasury is not going to transfer the money because they say that they need to know whether there will be candidates using public funds in the general election. They haven't done that in a long, 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 long time. Democrats don't. use, and Republicans, they don't use that public funding in the general election. In fact, they don't even use it in the primaries. They don't use public funding because it comes with strings attached. You have to minimize your expenses. So they're kind of coming up with a reason that sounds rather bogus for not giving us the money that they 10 minutes before said was on its way. I don't know. It's not hard to think of what the scenarios might have been that led to this flip-flop over the course of 10 minutes. And they had even put out a press release saying that we had qualified for the matching funds. And now suddenly they're saying, oh, but Treasury's not going to give it to you. So before I speculate on why that might be happening, I just want to assure you we are talking to lawyers here. We are going to fight this, but it does, again, underscore that the Democrats are going to rather desperate lengths right now. Even if this part wasn't happening around the matching funds, the Democrats are going to desperate lengths right now to try to knock out their competition. In the same way they kept us out of the debates, they are trying to keep us off the ballot in a major way. We're already on the ballot for a majority of voters. And on that basis alone, we should be included in the debates. But they are now still trying to pull out all the stops and prevent us from getting on more ballots, taking us off of ballots where we're already on. And we have some dynamite attorneys who are going to be fighting this with us, who are already fighting this with us. And we badly need cash to tide us over. It would be unimaginable if the Democrats are able to use a delay tactic, just speaking hypothetically, if they're able to use a delay tactic here to force us to miss our ballot access deadlines, which are coming rapid fire right now. There are like 10 of them in the next couple of weeks that we need to complete, 10 more states. And we need to be a full board challenge to empire, oligarchy, and genocide. We need to be a full challenge to that, especially on the genocide thing. If we're still making progress, then Biden knows that we are at his heels and we're coming. If they're able to stop us from proceeding on the ballot, he can relax. He doesn't have to worry about 1 million people who are on the verge of death in Gaza. But if he knows that we are organized and we're not going to allow this to happen, it will be that much more pressure for him to provide relief or something to save 1 million lives that are on the line right now. So this is why it's really important that they not be allowed to come up with these stalling tactics. Like, for example, they're taking us to court in Nevada, where we qualified with 3 times as many signatures as we need, 3 times as many signatures. And they're trying, they put forward an injunction to stop us from being placed on the ballot because the state had already said, okay, you're on the ballot. So they have filed an injunction with the court. We have to hire a lawyer to stop that injunction and get us on the ballot. We have to fight this. And we know we have the facts on our side and we have the numbers on our side, but they have an army of lawyers and infinite money. So we need strategic money here to be able to fight these cases. And if everybody on this call is donating what you can, this is what we need. And then to spread the word, when we send you an email, if you can share that, and likewise our social media, if you can share it, if we can all step up right now, because the Democrats are really stepping up out of desperation, which should be our, encouragement. This should be like the most exciting thing possible, that we are really coming on strong here and that we are an unstoppable movement. The Democrats are freaking out. This is every reason for us to double down and stay the course. We need to do that right now. So I encourage everybody to front load your contributions. It's now that really, really counts. It's now when they're most trying to stop us. It's now when we are vulnerable because we have these ballot access deadlines that are coming up really fast. So, just to share kind of what our shock was today when we learned with one email, great, the money's coming, and 10 minutes later, actually it was 9 minutes later, give us your bank account so we can transfer the money. But oops, I think the Department of Treasury is not going to let you have it for this reason that we've never heard before, that they can't allow the money to come forward till they know who's going to apply for it in the general. Well, the two candidates that are going to be in the general election, they've already violated the rules of eligibility. You can't spend more than like $20 million of your own money. And they've spent a humongous amount of money. So, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And we'll have attorneys on it more fully as of tomorrow. So, stay tuned and we will get out more information about what exactly is going on here. And let's not let them stop us here as we are accelerating, as this movement is becoming really strong, and as the American people are dropping out. In the Democratic primary in New York, 83% of Democrats stayed home relative to 2020 with the same candidate. 83% of Democrats decided he just wasn't worth coming out to vote for. So the American people have had it. I think after tonight's debate, they will have had it even more. And this is the time for us to stand up, stand strong, double down, and insist that we have a voice in this election, that we have an anti-war, anti-genocide, pro-worker, climate emergency campaign in this election. And we're starting to organize now for the next debate, which is in September. I think it's going to be held by NBC. I know it's not CNN, but we're going to be conducting phone call campaigns and write-in campaigns and letters to the editor and all that. So if you haven't yet signed up, please do sign up at our website now. Make a contribution if you can, jillstein2024.com. Spread the word and assist in the petition drives if it's going on in your state or a state near you. I'm just reading here, Nadia says to everyone, donated $100, please everyone donate. If the people on this call, if everybody donated what you can, whether it's $10 or $100, or if you can donate $500, I did see one of those numbers flying around in there, that would be huge. That's exactly what we need to do now in the biggest way imaginable, so we can stop this absolutely authoritarian, tyrannical, anti-democratic party from trying to throw us off the ballot, which they are doing in every horrific way imaginable. And I have to say a huge thank you to August Yadon, I think if I got that right, Yadon, who just donated $3,300. Thank you so much. If everybody gives what they can, the Democrats, won't see it coming, and they will be just flabbergasted. And a $500 donation just came in from Miriam. Thank you so much, Miriam. So yeah, let's make this happen. Angela just donated $50. Thank you so much, Angela. And Dr. Zainab just pitched in. Elaine Lopez just donated $75. We are so grateful. So we are coming up to, wow, Mark Alborno is saying we can make it up to 13,000 if we, apparently there's a match going on. Apparently some kind soul is willing to match up to, maybe it's a couple, which it will match up to 6,600. And so if they're matching it, then we're getting, 13,000, which is a big help. We've got to raise that money for the lawyer in Nevada this weekend. And that was like $15,000. So there's that. Now there's this whole other set of costs related to the effort to deny or delay our matching funds, which is like such a shocker because we anticipated paying a whole lot of people, including our staff, that has been deferring their salary, in part, waiting for the matching funds to come through. So shout out to our staff, shout out to everyone, who's been making so much sacrifice here to be able to keep fighting and to be able to just push past this hurdle and let the American people be heard and let the American people have some choices. Because if we have choices, we will prevail. They're just trying to silence us, and it's just evidence that their days are numbered. They know it, and we can make this work. So again, I want to just give a huge thank you. Oh my goodness, a whole lot of messages here. Maggie Ross, thank you so much, Maggie. Threw in $25 tonight. Yeah, Cindy Matthews is saying, evil Dems want Jill's staff to go without pay. How low can you go? You're not kidding. And I think well, I don't know this for sure, but there's always the timing of this now too. This happens on a Friday, on debate Friday. I'm sorry, on debate Thursday. Debate Thursday, when we're flat out trying to prep for this debate and get ready for this debate, we've been dealing with this crisis in our matching funds all day. Is this just coincidence that this happens today? This happens to drop today? Is that part of silencing us so that we don't, have a response to the debate? Who knows? After the kinds of corruption and dirty tricks that the Democrats are playing with these, advertising for infiltrators, hiring an army of lawyers to throw us off the ballot, working with a whole slew of nonprofits and so-called charitable groups and super PACs, which is what they've got to try to insert stories into the media to smear us and to tie us up in just ridiculous takedown campaigns. There's just a huge system here that reminds us of what went on in North Carolina in 2022 with Matt Ho's campaign, where the Democrats impersonated Greens, made phone calls to people who had signed Matt Ho's petition to get him on the ballot. They impersonated Greens and said, would you please take your name off the petition? And they knocked Matt off the ballot that way by drawing down on the signatures on his petitions. Well, it then turned out that they called, as they were making calls to get people off the petition, they happened to call the co-chair of the Green Party and said, hey, we're from the Green Party, we want you to take your name off the petition. And the co-chair said, oh, that's very interesting, tell me more. And he got a recording device on to record the conversation, which was then used in court later to fine the Democrats for these dirty tricks, which in my view should be considered fraud. Why is that not election fraud? I don't know why. But this is what they do. This is what they do regularly. And we were able to prove that in a court of law. And the Democrats were fined some $6,000 for that. It should have been much more. The cost of the attorneys were higher than that. But this is the games that they play. And we now have them documented, better than ever before. We're hip to their games. We can stand up and fight them now. And again, that's why we need your support, because the Democrats are really at the end of the line. And this is why we absolutely need to stand up and demand that we have a choice in this election that's for us, that's of, by, and for the people, that is a pro-worker, anti-war, anti-genocide, climate emergency campaign. If we are not on the ballot across the country, those issues will be removed from the dialogue as they were tonight. We did not hear the truth. We heard Biden's usual claims that he's the climate president. Hardly. And I could rant about that all night, but I don't want to keep people on. It's late. But we're not going to have the truth about the climate. We're not going to have, was a word said about Israel? Not one word. Israel and Gaza and Palestine, there was not one word. Was a word said about the actual nuclear war that we are, careening towards in Ukraine right now? I didn't hear anything about that. About the devastating cost of the endless war machine and how it is endangering and impoverishing us all, we don't hear about that. We didn't hear about Medicare for all. We didn't hear about rent control. We did not hear about a living wage for a minimum wage. We didn't hear a bit about a $25 an hour living wage, let alone $20 an hour. And when they promised they would pass the $15 an hour minimum wage, they passed. They took a pass on that, and they refused to support that. So it's going to be more smoke and mirrors all the way out here. We've got a huge fight on our hands, and it's a credit to everyone on this call that we are going strong and that we've created this much momentum now that the Democrats are absolutely running scared. So I want to give a big thank you to everyone for being on this call tonight, for joining us, for standing with us. And again, go to jillstein2024.com, join the petition drive, carry petitions in your state. When you go to the website, click on the ballot access menu at the top, and you'll get a map of the country. Click on your state, and it'll tell you, if you see it's green, that means we're already on the ballot. If it's not, if it's yellow, that means we have a ballot drive going and we need your help. If your state is all set, but a state next to you needs help, you can come and help, and click on that state and just get in touch, because we'll get back to you right away. We are going full bore to be a full challenge that demands that we challenge empire and oligarchy and genocide right now in real time, as lives are on the line, as our lives are also on the line in this escalation towards World War III, in the crushing inequality that's just disabling our economy and our jobs, and continuing the inflation and the unpayable rents. On so many fronts, we are in really desperate straits right now, but these are fixable. These are absolutely fixable if we have real public servants in office now who are working for us, who are not working for the business as usual candidates for Wall Street and the war machine. So with that, again, I want to thank you so much for all you're doing, and thank you so much for your support. Let's keep the heat on, and we'll be in touch soon. And I'm just checking to see if my team is just giving me any last word here, but I'm not seeing it. So we'll consider that a night. Thank you so very much for spending so much time with us tonight. And thank you for refusing to just roll over for the empire that is throwing us all under the bus right now. We can stand up. And remember the words of Alice Walker: the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We do have the power in this election. It's 68% of Americans that want to stop the genocide and who want a diplomatic solution. It's 44 million Americans who are locked into student debt, who want a student debt bailout and free public higher education, which we didn't have time to get to tonight, but hopefully you've heard that from us before. We have 100 million Americans who are locked into debt, medical debt, and 87 million Americans who do not have adequate health care. So, we got the numbers here. We have the numbers, we have the values, and we have, a world to win back. We have the power of our convictions if we stand up and say no to the apologists who are telling us to, to just surrender to the parties of war on Wall Street. Don't listen to them. We have the power, if we choose to take it, the power to create an America and a world that works for all of us. That power is in our hands. Let's make it happen together. Thank you all so very much.